here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned. Immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of Richard Barbieri, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff. Has a new solo album coming out, Hauntings, and this is going to be released on the 10th of April 2026. Member of Japan, Porcupine Tree, Numan, and various other musical combos, and has been releasing quite a few solo albums in the last few decades. Anyway, this is the interview with Richard. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject of the early formative years. Richard, it's over to you.
I became kind of fanatical about music probably when I was about 14. Previous to that, I was into sports, so I was at a school football team. I played a lot of tennis, and I was kind of just, doing the same thing most kids do at school, really. But 14 years old, I started looking at albums, and then I became a collector, and then I went to concerts nearly all the time. When I got my first job, I spent all the money on concerts and albums, and it was like the whole glam rock thing, Roxy Music. Bowie, Bebop Deluxe, Sparks, that kind of.
Did you creep into that world? There was a couple of other ones when there was heavy metal and prog rock. Did they come onto your consciousness?
Yeah, I was just about to say, in equal measure, it was prog rock, and actually, when I look at my concert tickets, probably heavy metal as well, because I've got tickets for Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple. And I love Genesis and I love Yes. And they two didn't go hand in hand for sure, but for me, I like both equally.
Yes, well, it can be done. It was interesting because did you have any older brothers or sisters that influenced your music, or you were the eldest?
No. We used to congregate around each other's houses, just anything to sort of get out of our own house and spend the evening at someone else's was like a luxury. And
yes,
so we'd go around each other's houses and they'd play the record collection. And when we went round to my bandmate Mick Kahn's house, he had an older brother, and we used to kind of raid his bedroom for kind of cassettes. And so we got like the early Roxy Music albums and stuff like that. And we had the bonus of getting all his naughty magazines.
Nice tidbits
As well, so it was like a double whammy, really.
Yes, at that age, it's always exciting. And so, yes, well, I had an older brother, 7 years older. He had a couple of heavy metal albums, but he was the prog period in the 70s. So it was like Wishbone Ash. Yeah, it was, yes, Genesis, Wishbone Ash, Barclay James Harvest. The solo work of Rick Wakeman was particularly popular, and various other ones, Steve Hackett. So, and I'd sneak into his room and sort of go, oh, I'll just go and play this while he's out, and be kind of mesmerised by King Arthur and Journey to the Centre of the Earth. All those albums were just like amazing. And there was Vivian Stanshall. I remember being freaked out because suddenly hearing this voice going, my God, who's that? And it was from the record. And obviously Tubular Bells was there as well.
I was going to say Tubular Bells, that was a big deal, yeah.
All these kind of soundtracks, and then Vangelis and Patrick Moraz suddenly was there. And I would just kind of be, I was only about 10 at the time, but there was Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, which I loved at the time, because it was that kind of rock, wasn't it, really? There was no 7-inch singles. It was very serious. It was albums or bust. And Roger Dean posters. So that was kind of interesting.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
He was a very big. And so I was obsessed with football. What was your team and your position that you loved so much?
Well, I was captain of the school football team, and it varied between what used to be called right back and right half.
Right.
In the old formation that we know.
Yes.
So
because right backs don't normally get to be a captain, do they?
Well, now it's a completely different thing, isn't it? Like now, what a right back is someone who's just up and down the wing.
Yes.
And that wasn't really me. It was more a defensive position, and then the midfield position where you would have captains in the midfield. It was quite normal. That was my thing. I was better probably at tennis. I mean, I played tennis all my life until got an injury about 10 years ago, and then couldn't play anymore. But
Was it kind of the Ilya Nastasi period that you were playing
yeah,
to?
yeah, kind of. I mean, I started yeah, about that time actually, very young. I won some, tournaments and was in the Kent squad and, sort of things like that. So I was okay at it.
Blimey, that
Um,
was very good. Did you master the backhand, or did you have to use two hands for that?
there was no two hands in those days. Probably
No.
when Jimmy Connors came along, that was the first time we saw a two-handed
Yes.
backhand.
And then it just opened the floodgates,
And
didn't it?
yeah, the backhand was my preferred
My
shot,
God.
really.
Were you right-handed, by the way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the football side of it is a bit embarrassing, but you just you support the team where you grow up and where your dad takes you. So, being a South London boy, it's the Lions.
Oh, Millwall. Blimey. And you went you went there.
I
You
even
went to,
went there once with blue hair. I think
crikey. That is quite scary, isn't it?
that is scary. I mean, yeah. There's some real knuckleheads.
Yeah, my God, that was quite an education. It wasn't flower power, was it? And
No, it
peace and
wasn't.
love.
But I have to say, they're playing some nice football now, and they're near the top of the championship.
Oh, well, there you go. That's very. We had Ipswich and Norwich. We were sort of that was our local
Of
teams,
course, we're
really.
playing Ipswich on Saturday.
Oh, at Portman Road, yeah.
Yes, live, I think, probably at 12.
Oh God, there you go. So when you got to 16, that ripe old age, which seemed so, did you go on to A levels, or was it sort of going into what?
No, no, I wanted to get out of school, and I left. I had just about enough O levels to get a job, and I joined a bank um, for about a year, a little over a year, and that's the only job I've ever had.
Right,
And I left the
yeah.
bank. I left for the group to.
That must be quite funny because I don't do you when you look at your pension and you look at all the credits that you've done, whether you get a state pension or not, it's amazing when you look back and you think, God, they've because this was before computers, they would have probably put that on there on your sort of when you were 16 to 17, wasn't it? Your
Yes, yes, I guess so.
it would have helped your state pension there. Your 1 year of employment. Oh God, there you go. That's life. Yeah. So then, when did the keyboards appear in your life, and why the keyboards? Was it Emerson, Lake and Palmer?
Well, yeah, you like to think that you could do that and that you could be like that, but it was never going to happen. You join a band at school, your friends. It's more about friendship than kind of talent or musical sort of suitability. And usually it's whatever instrument is left or what's going. And I like the idea of the keyboards. I was always kind of drawn to that anyway. And I quickly learned I had no aptitude for them whatsoever.
Right.
So I had a
Handy.
very kind of difficult beginning with the group, always feeling insecure, never really being at the level they were at. And it all changed when I got into synthesizers,
Right.
the electronics, and that opened up a whole world to me. And I wanted to do what Eno was doing with Roxy Music. I mean, he wasn't a proficient player, but he was just working with sound and just kind of introducing abstract kind of ideas into these pop songs, and that interested me, and I had some aptitude for that, and I slowly started to get my own voice. And then, by time the sort of second, third album, I established myself as an equal member of the group and felt fine about it then, and went forward from there, really.
Yes. How did you sort of navigate those kind of musical changes from that? Because the 70s is, quite extraordinary what happened during such, I suppose perhaps every decade is, but, going from sort of your metal to prog to, did you slip into punk quite sort of seamlessly?
Yeah, yeah, it's hard trying to work out what our influences were, but to me, I know that David was always a big Tamla fan, uh, so he liked those Tamla Motown songs, and he liked Frank Sinatra and kind of crooner stuff. But we were also into American punk. We didn't really take to the scene over here, but we liked things like Television, Patti Smith, Talking Heads, that kind of Lou Reed.
So it was more the American no wave scene that you were more drawn to.
Well, the American punks, there was always a kind of art attached to it.
A huge amount of art.
You know what I mean? It was like they were punks, but then they were like poets as well.
Yes.
But here, it was all about, we're just shit and we don't care.
Yes.
And also there was like it was vacant. There was nothing behind it, and that was the whole point of it here. But the fact that it was a long way away, again, a long way from home, and it was also these artists all seemed quite interesting. Even Iggy Pop was, there was just some kind of extra dimension to the artists. Whereas here they were just kids who were just angry kids who couldn't really, didn't really play very well or have great ideas.
Yeah, I mean, Sham 69 weren't sophisticated, were they?
No, I mean, I think what came out of punk was great. Susie and the Banshees magazine, Ultravox, very nice punky kind of new wave.
Yes.
Bands that came out of it. But I think we had a bit of that on our second album for sure. And then it went all suddenly silky and sophisticated and orchestral and electronic for our third album. Just a complete change.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Were you embracing Clubland at that stage as well? Were you sort of getting down to, I mean, you obviously weren't at Studio 54, but were you beginning to be influenced by that slight scene as well?
Well, yes, but we didn't really go to the sort of places that you were supposed to be seen necessarily. So we might have been to Blitz once, but we didn't go there regularly. We didn't really mix with our sort of peers at that time. We went to places like Legends, Monkberries, Browns, Tramps, that kind of thing. So it was all a bit more adult, I guess.
Yes. Was there any other bands like you at the time? Were you part of any scene?
Well, we became part of the new romantic scene, I guess. So bands followed us, like Duran were obviously influenced by us to a degree. And by the time they were getting a profile, the new romantic thing was kind of really prominent. But we'd already moved on again. We were making an album called Tin Drum, which was completely outside of all that.
Yes.
But at the time, we had a lot of fans within, the musicians at that time were kind of fans of ours. A lot of people would follow us around. Duran used to follow us around. Gary Numan, Tears for Fears were fans, I think. Human League.
Yes. And what was Simon?
They all wrote better songs, and they all were, they all became more successful.
Well,
it makes sense because we weren't really after that. We wanted to make kind of weird, interesting music.
Yes. And what was Simon Napier Bell like to work with? Was that an interesting relationship?
Well, I guess at the beginning it was it was very much to our advantage to have someone with that sort of profile, because he could open doors, he could walk into any place and have a meeting. So, you were already halfway along from the very beginning.
Yes.
So yes, a big advantage in that sense. And I suppose we were very young, and a lot of our time was spent really around adults.
Right.
Didn't have many friends of our own age. So we suddenly had a manager who, I guess he was in his 30s then, maybe late 30s. The people in our office were older. Our press person was older. And they'd take us to different places. They'd take us to nice restaurants. And or go and see, go to a cabaret thing, or go and see Lorna Luft or something. So
right.
it wasn't kind of it wasn't the usual kind of upbringing, I guess.
No. Did it feel very sophisticated and quite a
Yeah, we thought so. Yeah, but of course,
lawn?
we were a godsend to him because we didn't want to talk about money. We weren't interested in how the whole process worked. Yeah, it's perfect for someone like that. And as
Yes.
time went on, it and things started to fall apart. It was quite obvious he was playing people off against each other in the group, and it was all a bit of a game.
Yes.
And also, we didn't really make any money. Um, you know,
When you did your last couple of albums, you signed to Virgin.
Yeah.
Did that shift things for the band at all?
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. For all the time that you were getting ripped off in those days, you also were getting amazing opportunities. So it's a kind of thing of one playing off against the other. The the good thing about the old style record labels was that they had kind of mavericks working for them. They had people who would think outside the box. If
Yes.
somebody took up your calls, they would get stuff done. The press officer that we had was fantastic. I mean, they used to wine and dine journalists. You'd bribe journalists, I mean, but the main thing was to get your artist, before the public. And of course, the band had to be ready and had to deliver the goods, but you had that help, and then they'd pay you to go on tour. Of course, it's all money you owed them back.
Yes, this is true.
Everything, it's like taking a mortgage, and when you finally paid off the mortgage, you don't own the house, they still own it forever.
Yeah.
And they own our work forever, and they own it beyond the universe. That's in the
Yeah.
contract as well. So if you decided one day you thought you could make up a new law on a different planet, the record company would still,
Yes.
the contract would be in place.
Oh, what a delight, actually. When you were coming to do the penultimate album, Gentlemen Take Polaroids, this was the last one with Rob, wasn't it, Dean?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Was there a feeling with the band that this was going to be the last album with him at that stage, or was the atmosphere changing quite a bit?
Yeah, it just naturally went that way in that we were suddenly more interested in keyboards. David was writing on keyboards more than guitar. And at that time, it was a rare time in music where guitars weren't really prominent to the fore. It was almost like the guitar was a little bit of a kind of dynamic that you didn't necessarily want in all the tracks. So it became more and more a case of the guitar was adding flavour to certain things, and Rob was writing lovely parts, and it sounded great, but it was used less and less. And I think David became more interested in the keyboards and in electronics, and so it just became a natural thing. It wasn't anything planned or any personality problem.
During that period, I mean, it's always kind of interesting, the political background at that point, because, 79, Thatcher gets in, then we have the Falkland War, the miners' strike, we have, Greenham Common, and suddenly, there's a massive sort of shift, isn't there, on the political front. Did that sort of influence any of the band at all, or were you a little bit inside your own bubble at that stage in life?
Well, first of all, we were being that age. We were at the age where actually their brains hadn't fully developed. I don't believe they do until you're about 25. So, although we were making really interesting work and we were able to do these what seems like amazing things, we wouldn't make any correct life choices, or you know what I mean?
Yes.
You don't make any lifestyle decisions or think you just don't have the intelligence, really. I mean, our background, we were all working class, and my mum was very Labour. I remember as a kid, it was always, you'd put Labour up in the nose, and you'd see down the street, and she hated Thatcher, I remember. But I think my father kind of admired her. but he didn't sort of say too much about it because my mum sort of wore the trousers in the house.
Right.
And of course, we were very much Thatcher's children, weren't we?
Absolutely.
Like, absolutely represented the times, ambitious, going our own way, promoting Britain in other countries, bringing people to this country, paying taxes here. It was all like, yeah, go ahead and do that. And the whole thing with, there was a lot of Japanese influx into London at that time. We had a very good relationship with Japan on the economic side of things. And Japan had a lot of businesses here, and we were loving that. Loads of lovely Japanese restaurants. And it was a very, you could say we were like, her kind of representatives, weren't we? Just the type of person, type of sort of business that she would have approved of.
Well, yes, you didn't look like members of Discharge or Conflict, did you?
No. But having said that, we wouldn't have voted Conservative. We as far as I know, we were voting Labour, and then you go through periods where you don't vote. But then it's that thing. If you're young and you kind of I don't know, you would vote Labour, wouldn't you? You vote with your heart.
Yes. Well, I think there can be
when you get older, then people tend to vote with their heads.
Yes, and also there was quite a big anarchist movement in the 80s and 90s, and there probably still is. But there was a sort of "don't vote because you'll only encourage them" motto, and it's like not realising how amazingly lucky we are to have a certain democracy. But if you said that in a particular setting with friends, they would just scoff and say you're just being a liberal, and you're thinking, But now things feel quite different. It's like, I think we should all vote. But then you probably get scoffed at and be called a liberal again. But I mean, it's not bad being called a liberal, is it really?
No.
So that last album, Tin Drum, I mean, that's quite an amazing piece of work, isn't it? What was the atmosphere like with the band at that point? Was it a harmonious relationship?
Yeah, not fully. It had got to the point where there was some sort of friction. But I have to say that album, we really kind of knuckled down with that album, and it was very intense. The work was very intense, and it was a very creative time. So I think that kind of superseded everything, that the work was the main thing. And around that time, there was tensions with Mick and I think David, and I think Mick didn't always attend the studio. He would do his parts and then he would go off. Whereas I liked to be in the studio all the time, whether I was working or not.
Yeah.
If it was somebody else's day to do so, I'd still want to be there. That's where I wanted to spend all the time. But it did get quite intense, and obviously with myself and David programming these synthesizers, it took a while, and the patience that the producer had was great. It was amazing. So he was very much a part of the band, I think, at that time, and it was a real group effort.
Yes.
And it's not my favourite album in terms of making it, but I think it's the best work. It's the most original work.
Yes. Did it feel, when it was done and you sort of were holding it, did it feel like a certain closure at that point, or were you still thinking the band were still a going concern?
No, I think we knew it was. We'd more or less been told. I mean, I think David had decided that it wasn't going to carry on. I think it's the thing with David and Mick. They were the ones with the higher profiles, and obviously they were more open to outside influences. They were more exposed to the flattery and the criticism, and people kind of went to them for things. So it became clear that Mick could make a solo album if he wanted. David could easily make solo albums if he wanted. And then it's just down to what you want from life, what you know what your aims are, what kind of person you are, how success affects you. Myself and
Yeah.
Steve were happy to carry on and do the same. You know, keep trying to progress with each album. But when you see it falling apart, really, there's not really much you can do.
God, yeah. If you could go back now, do you think the band could have dealt with or been helped with band therapy? Would band therapy have helped at all at that stage?
That's an interesting point. I mean, in a way, we were sort of in band therapy when Simon first started managing us. I mean, the first thing he did was get us a Harley Street doctor who was a psychiatrist as well as an ear, nose, and throat specialist. And he would kind of get us into these sessions with this doctor. And you'd think, well, why am I here? And you would just ended up talking to this doctor, and you're kind of in therapy.
Right. God, that's a very
You're only
interesting
like
approach.
about 18 or 19. And then he had, what was the next move? It was to get all your tonsils out.
Straight out, my God.
Straight out. Nothing wrong with you, but get
No,
them all out. So
get them out.
presumably that's like a kind of boy band tactic, isn't it? I guess, to make sure that you're always available for work.
Blimey. God, that's amazing, isn't it? You could have.
Yeah, it's real quite dark stuff really when you go into it. And the doctor was a cocaine addict, I think, as well. And I don't know, you'd go there and you'd see Britt Ekland in the waiting room and you'd think, wow, it's fantastic. It made you feel really grown up.
Well, absolutely.
Thought you're a real
Yes.
adult going in, you know, having a bit of therapy and having some
Mm,
vitamin B injections. Just made you feel grown up. And of course, as I said, your brain hasn't even finished developing.
no, but seeing Brick, probably thought, is Rod going to be around the corner at the same time? Actually,
Well,
did
people first.
did you meet? I know Mick also worked a bit with Angie Bowie at one stage. Did you meet David at all or Angie at that
No,
stage?
never did meet David Bowie. Met Angie Bowie, yeah, because we used to go out with them quite a bit. And yeah, they got on. They had like a Greek background. Both of them
Of
were I think,
course,
Greek
yeah.
Cypriots. And she was quite funny and quite loud and, you know.
Very, yes, but I just remember seeing a little clip one night going through sort of, I don't know, looking at interviews with different people and then sort of came across this project that she did with Mick and thinking, oh, I didn't even realise. There was a lot of those. I mean, there was a bit of money sloshing around, wasn't there, for sort of quite nice, indulgent projects at that stage?
Well, yeah, everybody was making money. Probably not the artists, but everyone surrounding the artist. So, you know, every song had a video, didn't it? You
Well,
know,
MTV sort of,
budgets for those videos were ridiculous. I mean, the money was just being given out left, right, and centre. The studios, um, all the hospitality, all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, and there was, you know, there seemed to be drugs everywhere as well. I mean, that's what they try to put onto the artists at quite an early age, because then you've got a certain amount of control. Yeah, it's a dark, you know, it can be quite a dark industry.
yeah, it was quite ruthless, really. I know I did an interview with a woman called Adele Berthet, who was from New York, and she was very suspicious about the whole sort of amount of heroin in the city and thinking, were the authorities kind of encouraging it? I think that was her take, and kind of enjoy, just thinking, well, this is one way to both control and destroy a young population at the same time,
Yeah, yeah.
which is very true. Did your band was that navigating the tricky world of drinking drugs okay, or were you a bit like Hawk when some people took one thing and other people took another thing?
Yeah, I think it was that sort of thing. I mean, Mick was always into weed. Was the thing with Mick was dope, um, which, you know, people always say, well, that's a natural substance. But I think it did give him a bit of a alternative sort of outlook on reality sometimes. Um, but you know, a lot of people do it, don't they?
Oh yes, and I mean that
And
period during the 80s. I mean, there was
wasn't
also
so
the
much
fest.
drinking. I don't know. I suppose you'd go out and you'd drink. Cocaine was the problem, really. That was the thing that you hopefully can navigate and then get in and get out quick. Because if you don't get out quick from that sort of drug, then it's horrible. That's a very nasty drug.
Yeah, I can't imagine it. So then, when the band finishes, your next project, is this with Steve and the Dolphin brothers? Is the way you navigate your next part of the 80s?
Kind of. I mean, we felt we were in the same boat, really. Mick had already secured a solo deal, as David had, and we were kind of the ones sort of left a bit without the same kind of profile. And we started off by making an ambient album. Actually, we went to Japan and we made a recording for the space shuttle mission.
Right.
And it was very, very ambient, kind of like along the lines of those Eno albums of the 70s. And that's, over the years, has proved to be quite popular. Seems to be the thing that people like about us two the most was that album for some reason. But and then after that, we got into this Dolphin Brothers thing where we re-signed with Virgin. And I think that was a mistake. That's because I think we were trying to be something that we weren't. It was that there was a big budget. Steve was going to be vocalist, and which he wasn't entirely comfortable with doing. And there was that kind of record company pressure, and we made music very much of that time. It was quite slick. It was quite commercial, but it just wasn't us. I don't think.
Was that the album Catch the Fall?
Yeah.
Right. So that was.
Yeah, I just feel that it was, I don't know, I listened to it and I can hear myself kind of, yeah, I don't think it was the right thing to do, to be honest.
Yeah. Well,
And then we got back to, then kind of there was a bit of a reformation with the band where we did this project called Raintree Crow. And that felt good again to be making that kind of music and doing something that was more experimental and a bit more real and not so much sort of artifice.
did it feel a bit like I hate the word healing, but was there a nice kind of holistic feeling of, after that intense experience with Japan, then sort of being able to somehow come back and sort of
I think
emotionally?
I think there were a few aims. I mean, I think from David's point of view, it was a case of just leaving that whole Japan thing behind and seeing if we could all make music together in a different way and come up with something radically different, which we did. And I think also there was a feeling that, as friends, it would be good to, get back to that level that we had in the beginning. And for a while, it was all working really well. And then just towards the end of the album, the old things resurfaced, and we were just back to where we were before, really.
God, it's so tricky. I mean, technology was changing so much during that period. Were you sort of were you excited by it? Were you, embracing all the different production styles?
Yeah, I always have. Yeah, I always have. And it's often, it kind of dictates a lot of the music that you hear at the time, doesn't it? A lot of that prog stuff, the way you used to hear all those kind of chord progressions, and that was mainly because when they were using like the mellotron, it had tapes inside it that only lasted 8 seconds, so you would have to keep changing shapes of chords and keep, making these progressions all the time.
Right.
Likewise, when you had the first string machine where you could just hold notes endlessly, you'd hear them endlessly on everything. You'd have these high strings that would just be there in the background, whirring away forever. People tend to kind of use what they can of the new technology. And I'm always interested in kind of the latest gear, always buying stuff all the time.
I mean, I sort of found that with sort of music, there's a sort of roughly a few, I don't know, there's always this new wave of 16, 18-year-olds come along every, say, 3 to 5 years, and the music scene shifts a bit. So you had, roughly, like, perhaps look at it as the punk, post-punk. I mean, I know there was lots of other genres. For me, there was like that indie pop world, which was roughly the years of the Smiths from 83 to 87. When they broke up, there was a real another shift. There was dance music came along, ecstasy appeared as well. There was that Detroit house sound, various record labels appearing as well. The Orbital 808 state guy called Gerald. Did you kind of find that interest towards that late 80s and into the 90s? Was that something that sort of caught your interest?
At the time, I didn't particularly like 80s music. I didn't really listen to much 80s music while I was in the 80s. It wasn't that interesting to me. Now I look back on it and I love listening to it. I love those records. But going into the 90s, that was a really interesting time for music, I think. I think the 70s and the 90s for me are my favourite decades for music. So 90s brought a lot of different genres. I mean, you had, as you say, you had the whole electronic scene. You had people like Aphex Twin coming through, Warp Label,
Yes.
early kind of Boards of Canada stuff, and you had sampling. You had DJ Shadow. You had interesting artists like Björk coming to the fore, and then there was grunge, wasn't there, as well?
Well, absolutely.
There was that kind of grunge thing. Jeff Buckley. Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff in the 90s for sure.
Yeah. And again, it suddenly became record sales went through the roof as well. And there was, I suppose, what was independent in the sort of 80s became kind of almost the mainstream in the 90s. I mean, different people, but I suppose the fans of that time became, the main players and bands, like, the Britpop period, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then in America you had that slightly heavier sound as well, like Soundgarden. And I don't know if you've noticed, but you get a producer who's big in one decade and then just that's their sound, isn't it? Mickey Most, Phil Spector, or even people like Trevor Horn. There was a definite producer and a sound that people bought, and then it was like, yeah, actually, we've had enough of this. So it's kind of interesting for an artist like yourself. It must be quite hard to keep interested, or at least thinking I'm not sort of rehashing too much here.
Yeah, I don't think we ever really were worried about fitting in or particularly being part of something. We by accident, in a way, we were part of something for a period of time, and then we went out of that again. So, like I was saying before, when we made Tin Drum, that wasn't an 80s sounding album. I mean, it didn't have the same production values as 80s records.
No.
It didn't have that reverb and that space. It was a very dry, metallic, quite cold sort of sound. And it was also working with sounds that were quite inspired by world music. It had this exotic kind of flavour to it. And it was a bit, not cheesy, but it played with these kind of sort of concepts, Chinese music and Eastern music, Arabic music. And it wasn't really anything like that big Trevor Horn sound with the huge snares and the big vocal soaring above with the reverb. And so I've never particularly worried what the trend is at any one time. There are just things that I like and that.
Did during the 80s, did film influence you at all? Because there was one film that most people liked of us who were part of a certain scene, Betty Blue, the soundtrack to Betty Blue. Was something that sort of interested you?
Yeah, we like that film. We used to see films all the time in the 70s going into the 80s. We would always go to the art house type cinemas and see these kind of classic arty films, but even the big kind of films being hugely important.
Yeah, there was just like things like Wings of Desire and Diva and Betty Blue, and then you had the sort of Jim Jarmusch films like Down by Law and Stranger Than Paradise, and and there's always those interests in soundtracks, even like things like Taxi Driver or
Oh,
Mean
yeah.
Streets and stuff like that. Was
Chinatown, yeah, a lot of, and then going into the Kubrick movies as well.
were you getting into soundtracks at that stage?
I would have loved to have. It's my unfulfilled ambition. I've never made a movie soundtrack. Never been asked.
Right, that's just rude, isn't it?
Yep. And it's not going to happen now, I don't think. So it's just one of those things that just didn't happen, even though I feel my music has always been perfect for that.
Yeah,
It doesn't work in that way. I don't know why, but it doesn't work that the director just kind of comes up to you and says, "Would you like to do this?" It's not there. It's not all those people's calls. It has to go through a certain channel.
yeah. I'm sure it's all very strange and incestuous, actually, isn't it? These things always are.
Kind of closed shop in some cases, yeah, which I'm sure is the same in a lot of industries, isn't it?
Yes, I know. And you could never work out why someone gets the gig. You think, they're not that talented. How did they get it? And you think, oh, that's the brother-in-law of so-and-so. And you think, oh, okay, fair enough. It all works. So your 90s, you worked with you had a lot of different projects in the 90s. You had with Alice, didn't you? An Italian singer.
Yes. Yeah, we did a lot of stuff in the 90s, yeah. We started our own little label as well, myself, Mick Kahn and Steve Jansen, so we could release as much music as we wanted. Because when you're with a record label, it's kind of, there's a process and you can only do so much at any one time. And that allowed us to put our music out and get it to our kind of fan base, which we still had at that point. And then work with other people. Yeah, we got a lot of offers to do various things, and that was a nice project.
Yes.
Yeah, with this kind of Italian sort of star who had she'd won the Sanremo contest as a very young kind of performer, and I suppose she's a bit like the Italian Kate Bush,
Right.
but a little bit more kind of maybe more feminist even kind of thing. I mean, I know a lot of Italian men didn't get her at all, so her fan base was almost all women, um, and I think she was quite brave in what she was doing because Italy was fairly kind of misogynistic, in the 80s, 90s. Um, and yeah, and trying to make, interesting music and getting various kind of British and American artists to collaborate with her. And she just went outside of that kind of boring Italian scene they have all of their own.
Yeah. So did
It's,
you work with Danny Thompson and
yeah.
Jacko as well on guitar?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we were part of that band, and yeah, really, really nice, very enjoyable. Because in Italy, it's the music seems pretty stale. You have a situation where it's a social thing. It's because kids don't leave home, basically. They kind of stay with their parents, and their parents already have the grandparents living with them. So you've got three generations all in one house. They all listen to the same music, and they all like the same artists.
That's just not good,
That
is
that
it?
is,
That's
the
just
two
weird.
things you've got to do something interesting is leave home as soon as you can, and don't like the same things that your parents like.
Which is normally quite easy for our generation. My parents like bad country and western. That's terrible.
Which is why most kind of music acts would come from here or the States, because that's the way we are socially. We try to sort of get away from home, not because we're unhappy, but just because we want to do our own thing. In
Yes.
Italy, it's the family just stays together for as long as possible, and so you're not going to get any kind of sort of artistic movement coming out that way.
No. But that's it. So then you were in so there was with Alice, and then there was Numan, and also Porcupine Tree. So did you suddenly find yourself in a new community of musicians and artists and
Yeah,
scenes?
I think getting involved with No Man initially was quite good for me because they were so enthusiastic about music and what they were doing and what other people were doing. I'd become a little bit jaded by then, and they kind of rekindled my enthusiasm for it. It was kind of infectious, you know. And they were a bit younger than me as well, and yeah, I like that. And we. We seemed to work well together, and that in turn led to me working with Stephen on this other project called Porcupine Tree. And of course, you know, fast forward sort of 20, 25 years or so, and that's kind of the biggest project of them all.
Yeah. God, that's amazing, isn't it? Porcupine Tree. So then you mentioned at the very beginning the bays. So did that? This is an interesting little project. So how did that one? Was drum and bass and sort of soundscape music and dance music? Was that? How did you get involved with this bunch?
Okay, so um, around that time, I was also asked by the singer of Marillion, Steve Hogarth,
Right.
to play on his solo album. And he'd assembled a group of musicians. There was Clem Burke from Blondie on drums. There was Dave Gregory from XTC on guitar, and Andy Gangadine, who had played on the Massive Attack album Mezzanine, and he was kind of the trendy one, the most current one, and he was in it. And afterwards I learned that he joined because I was in it because he was a fan of Japan, and so he wanted to work with me as well. And we made this album, and then we took that on the road in various forms with different amounts of musicians involved. And I don't know, it was like the best pub band in the world. It was just all these kind of really great musicians, but we were playing these pubs and little places and worked really well. And that's how I got this friendship with Andy. And obviously, his kind of thing at the time was very, yeah, very sort of drum and bass, jungle, techno. And he had this band, and the whole concept of the band was that you don't rehearse, you just improvise.
Right.
And we took it from doing, you know, I only guested with them here and there. They were a going concern really, but they would play 1 minute they'd play Fabric Club in London, and then the next they'd be playing the Festival Hall with like Herbie Hancock as a guest. And then we did a show at the Festival Hall with an orchestra
God, that's
improvising.
very interesting. That was so. This was 2002 time.
Kind of around that time, yeah. And we would then go, you know, we played shows in Japan. We played a great show in the harbour in Sydney, Darling Harbour in Sydney, on a float in the middle of the harbour. We were out there on our own on this float, and we did a live soundtrack to the film Run Lola Run.
Oh God, I love that film. God, that
And
must have been.
you know the film has this kind of techno-y sort of
Yes.
soundtrack. It's very pacey and it's got this kind of momentum through the whole film. And they were, you know, we were perfect for that, and we just did this soundtrack to it. I'll have to get you a copy if I can. You know.
God, that's interesting because I'm sure recently I did an interview with somebody who was the original. Oh, he was in a band called. Oh, that was somebody Raymond Hell, a
The
German
original soundtrack, yeah, I can't remember who.
who was in Nina, who did 99 Red
Oh
Balloons.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he went into the world of sound. I think you have to go and live in LA, don't you, to get into that world,
Kind of, yeah.
basically. Yeah. So you did two John Peel sessions at the Maida Vale Studios.
Yeah, with the bass.
Fantastic. Was that a good experience?
It was great. I really enjoyed it. As I say, John Peel had
Loved
to
you.
had to kind of let me know of his sort of
His thoughts.
that I wasn't a particular favourite of his.
You slipped in there, didn't you?
Yeah, But I used to listen to John Peel when I was a kid, and I've got into so many acts because of him. On the other hand, he has the most awful taste as well. So he's just kind of, yeah, half and half, really, was how I kind of felt about him.
Well, there would always be something interesting that you wouldn't have got without listening to the show. I used to always just record his show on a trusty TDK D90 cassette, and out of 90 minutes, there might be just two things which were really, really amazing, but you had to listen to all of it. But the other bits were fine. It could be anything from the Bundu Boys to Gregory Isaacs to Napalm Death. It was just like, okay,
yeah, and he would be the sort of person who would play a whole album from beginning to end.
yes.
I don't know how he got away with those things at the BBC, but he was the one who could do that. And yeah, it's just, I do remember getting to a lot of things because of him. Yeah.
We were grateful. But then, obviously, you've done your lots of collaborations, but then solo work, which is where we come up to the present day with your new album, which has just come out, which is called The Hauntings, which is a fascinating album, actually. So you were, I've listened to a few of your interviews. So you were talking about this took you a little bit of time since your previous one to get together. So is the process being solo, is it very difficult to get motivated or get inspired or know where to start?
Yeah, I guess it is, because I don't force anything. If it's not happening, then it's not happening, and I'm not an ambitious for myself as an individual artist. I'm not greatly ambitious. I don't worry if my profile drops. If I don't do something for 7 years, it doesn't particularly bother me. So I'm not worried about having to make the album, and as such, it can take a long time before something falls into place. In this case, after a couple of years, it's just these concepts were circling around my mind, and I've managed to put together various sounds, and the whole thing just started to take shape. I was able to musically represent what I was feeling inside and what I was seeing. And then once that happened, I made the album really quickly.
Right.
Made it within 2 months, just straight off.
Blimey, that is fast. How do you, working through it, did you have some particular idea? Because I mean, do you work with kind of dreams? Do you work with, from sort of, do you have to sit there like, Brian Eno and have some sort of magic card system to sort of have stimulation? Or do you, how do your songs develop?
This did come from dreams. I mean, I have a lot of recurring dreams, which I find quite interesting because it takes me to certain places I've never been to. It takes me into other eras that I obviously haven't been to. And it's all very specific and very familiar. And yet I've not lived that, yet it occupies my mind.
So we're talking about the future here.
No, we're talking about the past. And also combined with those dreams, there's also memories and nostalgic memories of things that happened in the past, but also things that didn't happen in the past. So you kind of feel a kind of nostalgia for something, even though you didn't experience it.
Right. A lot. So is that a loss?
Well, that's a good way of putting it. There's actually a word for it now called anemoia.
Oh, there's a track on the album called Anemoia.
That's right. And this is from a book called the Book of Obscure Sorrows, the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. And it's a book this guy wrote not too long ago, and he wanted to find words or invent words for things that we didn't have words for. For something that wasn't satisfactorily described or explained. So anemoia is the feeling of nostalgia for something that you didn't experience.
Right.
And
but you've experienced it
on that word. It's there now. It's become part of the language. And that's such a good idea, that book. And he offers that people can submit their own words, their own meanings, and it's quite an interesting way of defining a new language.
Yes. And do you find with sort of those ideas, because I did an interview with another guy who did an album. It was really about places that meant a lot to him, and then he did this album, which
Mm.
he was sort of linking it all together to make some map. Do places also are they particularly sort of important in your life? Past memories of kind of
Yeah.
places that you were at a certain time in your life.
Yes, and places that I wasn't at.
Right.
There's a track on the album called 1890,
Yeah.
which it isn't really a musical piece. It's a sound design piece. There's no melody. There's no structure. It's just a collection of sounds to convey this kind of the image of this place that I go to, and it's kind of Victorian London. It's by the River Thames. It's very dark and grainy. It's not scary, but it's atmospheric. And luckily, I found this recording of the original chimes of Big Ben from 1890,
Right.
and it was the first time it had been recorded. And I combined that with this sample I had, this recording that I made, in fact, of a thunderstorm with this kind of torrential rain and lightning, thunder, which I recorded during the Rain Tree Crow sessions, actually, in south of France. I combined it with that, and then some little old radio broadcasts that I found, and then some musical boxes. And I was building this sound world that, for me, was very representative of the imagery and the place that I go to in that recurring dream.
God, that's amazing.
It's why, because it's instrumental music, I think the titles have to be very indicative. Each title has to make somebody think, oh, okay, well, I wonder what this is about. Okay, so it's called this. So, because
Yeah.
I don't write songs, so I can't give you lyrics. I can't give you explanations. So I have to do this through music.
But on the song, there was a track, the seventh track, which is called "Perfect Toys," isn't
Yeah.
it? And
Yeah.
that's got, is that saxophone with this kind of vocal saying "dancing shadows"? Is that
Mm.
from memory? So what's the inspiration for that one?
The inspiration for that one, again, it's a Victorian kind of setting. And it's those old toys that used to wind up, and they were like mechanical toys. So you've got like a kid's bedroom, and you've got all these toys, and some of the coils or the springs aren't quite fully wound. They haven't been quite wound up, and they're a bit loose. And
Yeah.
so the lights go out, darkness falls, and then you start hearing these little whirring sounds. And it's like these toys are slowly coming to life. You've got a little
Right.
musical box that starts up. So it's kind of quite horrific in a way. But, and then you've
Yes.
got these kind of, little mechanical toys that start sort of moving around and creaking. And I tried to recreate that thing. And then I had an idea for what it would be like. It's like these mechanical toys sort of telling their tales. And I got an AI voice. I tried lots of different AI voices to get this real deadpan kind of voice.
Right.
And the voice I ended up with was um, like a cross between Courtney Love and Stevie Nicks.
Quite good, actually.
But it
I
worked.
like
It worked quite well.
Yes. And is she singing "Dancing Shadow"? Was that the one
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
God, it's quite a nice, it's a lovely piece, actually. That was kind of, so with the album, when you put it together, because there seems to be, especially from your, after you got Traveller, and
Mm.
then it has a sort of flow to it. Does the whole thing in
Mm.
your mind, was it like a journey that we are
Yeah, It is a kind of journey, and it's almost like a time travel thing as well. You know, you're going forward and backwards in time, different places, some real, some imagined. Um, so it's kind of like that H.G. Wells thing where, you know, the
Right.
time machine, and
The
you're
time
seeing
machine.
all these things going past, the clocks are all going round, and so it's got a bit of that feel. And it ends on this track, which is very much an ending track, and it ends, I think, on a quite uplifting note, and that's called a new simulation.
Yes, because the last post, your penultimate track,
Yeah,
that and the one before,
yeah.
that's very. It's kind of it's very short. The one before that, but
Mm.
it's very light, isn't it? There isn't. It's a very incidental piece. Did it feel like you were coming to the end of a journey at that point?
Well, no, those two tracks go together. So you have Reveille, which is the morning call, the wake up for the. This is my kind of tribute to the people who died in the wars.
Right.
And obviously, the last post is what's played on the trumpet at the end of the day. And that was my kind of tribute to those people who died far from home, in lonely on their own, and seeing a lot of their comrades die as well. And I don't know, I'd never done that before, and I just thought I wanted to do something that a musical representation of that for me.
Yeah, because so when just going back to Snakes and Ladders, which is the first track, then
Mm.
is this again? Does Victorian imagery play a big part in your dreams and in your sort of idea of nostalgia?
It seems to, not through any particular choice. I mean, there's a track called Victorian Wraith, which is just about when I was a child. I used to see these Victorian apparitions floating around my room. I don't know how old I was. I was pretty young. I mean, I didn't know then that that was Victorian attire. I wouldn't have
Right.
understood. But the images have stayed with me forever. And now I know what they were and what they look like. And yeah, that was just a kind of memory of that, really.
Is the album a little bit like sort of an idea of innocence, childhood, going through a period of sort of life, war and death, and then rebirth?
Well, I suppose it has those aspects to it, doesn't it? Now you mention it. That's not, you found another you found another aspect to it. Um, but there is that involved. Um,
Because that second track, it has a kind of quite an Eastern vibe to it. It's quite a sort of exotic, I don't know, Oriental,
okay.
Eastern quality. Where was that idea from?
The second track, which is Anamoya, I think, um, what started it off for me were these women's voices and children, women and children laughing and playing. And I had this chord progression, and the two just seemed to go together and was very evocative. And it kind of reminded me of a sort of idyllic 80s sort of summer in the park with this family, uh, just really happy. That really kind of that different sunshine we had in those days,
Yeah.
where the sun was yellow and not white. And just that kind of I don't know, just a time of sort of happiness and no kind of worry. And that was the sort of theme for it. But musically, it had like a kind of mild drum and bass pattern to it. And I thought that'd be more interesting if I actually had a drummer play that. So it had this kind of human feel to it. So yes, I got this Swedish drummer that I wanted to work with for a long time, and I got him to play those parts.
Right. Was that Morgan?
Yeah.
Yes. Were you ever, side two of Is It Hands of Love by Kate Bush, you mentioned her earlier. Because that's quite a conceptual piece, you know,
Yeah,
with all these kind of
yeah,
bizarre sounds and ideas, and it's all very disturbing but sort of
yeah.
curious. I mean, your album has a lot of kind of those similar
Mm.
qualities to it at times.
Well, it's
Were
one of
you?
my favourite albums, and as you probably one of my favourite sides of an
Oh
album.
yes,
Yeah,
I think you can definitely say there's
yeah.
definitely side twos, just like
Incredible, yeah. And I saw her do that live as well for the last concerts that she did. Managed to see that.
yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
But again, so evocative of and that
Yes, I
kind
think
of
that's yeah. I mean, artists like that have a huge kind of influence on you. Um, and I think she worked in that way as well. She worked with a lot of dreams, didn't she? And a lot of dream worlds and creating these sort of these other sound worlds and things using a lot of samples and found sounds. Yeah.
and as an artist, do you have to get into a particular state to be able to find your real work or the work that you feel most proud of or feel most confident with? Often, well, I sort of say that in a side way because there were certain people that I loved during the 80s whose work was like, God, that is so kind of, there's a purity of the soul. And now when I've heard some of their work in later life, it's like, God, that's something's kind of gone wrong in their, I don't know, something, they just become people that aren't that, I don't know, they've lost it somehow, I feel.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you have to get into quite an emotional, spiritual state when you start to
No,
create?
no, I think it's something that comes to you. Um, I think a lot of musicians say that. To be honest, they're asked where they got the idea for this, or how did you come up with that song, or a lot of the time they say it just came to me. It came through me. I don't know how I did it. There's lots of you get that a lot from Dylan and McCartney. I don't know how I did that.
Right.
I mean, I know how I do it, so it's not that unconscious. But on the other hand, I don't force it. As I said, I kind of wait until it comes to you. I think there is some kind of magic, if that's the right
Yes.
word, but there's something that happens. It's almost like it's something that channels through, and you somehow pick up on that, and then you give yourself to that idea, and your personality becomes part of it. But I think it's something that can't. Yeah, I mean, for artists like that, obviously, it can only happen for a certain amount of time.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because it's kind of interesting because yours is such as has that Victorian gloom and mystery and quality. It's not a deserty. You know, there's some like Paris, Texas, all those sort of films where they've
Yes.
got that
Yes.
soundtrack. You know,
Yes.
there's this totally different energy. Whereas this has got that feeling almost of a, you know, was it Sherlock Holmes and Conan Doyle with Basil Rathbone, kind of
Yeah.
lurking mystery there
Yes,
with
and
it.
I think the cover is works as well. It's the first time I've ever been on the cover of one of my albums, and I think the cover has a kind of slight movie quality about it. It looks a bit like a kind of I don't know, half horror, half kind of film noir.
Vibe with light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, there you've got it there, and it's even I noticed it's even got this. That there's a stripe that's coming down, like almost down my back, like
Yes, on your onto your shoulder,
which is almost. I started thinking about the Omen.
of course.
That thing that comes through, and then the guy's decapitated, isn't he?
Yes, oh God,
But the photographer pointed out that it's just grazing me on the back, so I'll likely be okay.
you'll be okay. It's beautiful. It's got that and the lighting. I mean, that lamp is you know in the middle is
That's
so
great.
fantastic.
Yeah, we went to. I researched some places in Birmingham for that, all around the canals.
Right.
Um, so it's sort of Peaky Blinders territory.
Oh, it's quite good. And does it? I mean, does it feel a very different experience from the previous album, Under a Spell?
Hmm.
From that, you know,
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, Under a Spell's more musical. I think it's got more content, more arrangement, as my other albums have. This has less arrangement, really. and it doesn't have the same depth as my other albums. But I think what it does do more successfully is what you mentioned. It does create this kind of world. And it's a very definite kind of atmosphere that's there. And I think I've managed to translate that to sound really successfully.
Yes.
Yeah, not saying it's a, amazing album or anything. I'm just saying that for me to get what was in my mind out there, I think I've done it in a clear way.
Yes. Did you? I mean, when you sort of just on that point where you were talking about sort of um, remembering things that never happened, was it a case of sort of false memory syndrome or regret or some? I mean, I just was kind of curious what that was if you were sort of remembering things that didn't slightly happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, on the one hand, it could be kind of regret, as you say, false memory. Yeah, I mean, that second track, Anamoya, it kind of, I was talking about those voices. It's kind of like the family that I didn't have, in a way. I never had the typical kind of. I mean, I had a typical family, my family, but when I became an adult, I didn't do the thing: you go out, get married, have children. So I didn't follow that kind of path.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for people who do, there's a period of time where everything's quite sort of idyllic, and they look back to a certain time or a holiday or a place on the beach or a countryside or something where they're all together and everything's perfect. And it was kind of making something of that, whether it's a regret or whether it's anything to do with me or not. I don't know. It's just there is a nostalgia within it.
Yes. And sometimes I think there's a wish to somehow think, oh, that was a time when we were all here and life was very different to fast forward where we deal with things that happen as we get older to
Yes.
do with health, illness, death, just the passing of time. I find there's a song by Sandy Denny, Who Knows Where the Time Goes, which I still find lyrically just like, I think my favorite emotional states are romantic melancholia, that
Huh?
sense of like, I don't know, just sometimes enjoying being sad. It feels almost quite comfortable, but at the same time, there is a sort of like, God, we're on this planet and this amazing universe, and yet it just goes, doesn't it? And you wonder, God, what was that all about? It's just a flash, isn't it? Really, and we're so
Through amazing
insignificant.
times. We have lived through amazing times, though.
We have.
When you think of the variety and how things have moved so quickly and all the kind of social changes, the technology, everything, it's incredible, isn't it?
Totally. Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you sort of look back and you think, oh, that wasn't that long ago, and you think, oh God, that was 30 years or 40 years, or that's 50 years ago, and just like what's happened, when you almost kind of in your mind can just go through to the back to the present, and in that sense of God, because you mentioned future nostalgia, don't you, in one of your interviews? That idea of, so is that sort of to do with looking at the past with in a certain way that you're sort of feeling a regret for something that didn't happen.
It's kind of a yes. There was a guy who wrote a book. He studied at Goldsmith College. I can't remember his name. I think his surname is Fisher. I'm not sure, but he wrote a book called Ghosts of My Lives, and there's a chapter in there about the track Ghosts by Japan.
Right,
The idea of it was that it was what he called hauntology, and for him that was a sad nostalgia for a future that won't happen.
right.
And the guy ended up committing suicide, and he was obviously quite kind of involved in that, and couldn't really get that out of his mind. And it's an interesting read,
Yes.
and it is that I can. It's almost like you can't understand it, but on the other hand, it vaguely makes sense that you can possibly have a sorrow for something that isn't going to happen in the future,
God,
as if
that.
it existed, but it won't exist.
Oh dear, that's so tricky. So with this album, it's coming out next month, isn't it? Do you with this? Do you ever play live at all? Is
I,
there really?
yeah, I do. I have played live in the past, not many shows, but the occasional ones. And obviously, it's very difficult because it's just me usually, or me with maybe a couple of musicians.
Yes.
This always means that I mean, I try to do as much as I can on stage in performing, but you still have to end up putting certain things on backing track. Otherwise, you can't present the music in its recognizable
Yeah.
way. But I think the next time I play shows, I'm not going to try to present it in any recognizable way. I'm just going to do everything live, not worry about all the arrangements, and kind of part improvise, but also bring in elements of each track so that people will recognize that as being from that track, and they'll get a
Right.
flavor of it. And then I'll move on to something else, and it'll be this quite maybe more ambient and yeah, atmospheric kind of show. But I think I'd prefer that than to start, having percussion on tape and sequences and all kinds of things. So that's what I might explore. I mean, initially to promote the album, I'm going to have a few listening events, playback events.
Yeah.
The album's coming out in surround as well, which is a first for me again. So it'll be nice for an audience to hear it with the full kind of surround mix.
Fantastic. That is so good. And what else have you got lined up for the rest of the year?
Nothing really, as far as whatever I want. I think. I mean, Porcupine Tree have been getting together every so often and writing a few things, and we're trying to find a different sound, a different kind of a different way forward for the band. Um, so we don't know where that's going, but that's an ongoing thing in the background.
You've got very committed fans, haven't you, for Porcupine Tree?
Yeah, we have, yeah. And during that long hiatus, the fan base tripled. So it was like it's almost that's what you need to do. Just go away for
Just
a
to get
while.
away, and then they'll sort of
Yeah.
regret.
And then try and play golf. That's the only kind of sport that I can do now with my injury.
Yes.
So get out there and play golf.
Well, it's been nice weather, hasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So it's starting to get nice now.
Oh, well, look, thank you ever so much for your time. And I have really enjoyed sort of
Yeah, me too.
listening.
It's been very enjoyable and not kind of. I didn't know what to. Well, what I expected was the run-of-the-mill interview, which I've been doing quite a few of.
Yes.
But it's been great.
Oh, it's
Been
been
like
good. But
a nice kind of conversation.
yes. Yeah.
We
But
should
I've
have broken
really.
out a bottle of wine, really.
We should have done really. That would have been. But yeah, I'd love the. It's just been an intriguing listen. And when you, as I said, with the John Peel thing, when you listen to something new again from start to finish, you have
Mm,
to sort of listen to it a few times before it starts to sort of make
mm.
sense. And no, it's been really fascinating, and it's been, I've really enjoyed listening to some of your other interviews and yeah, your ideas. But dreams, that's where it's at, isn't it? Really.
It is.
Got to work. Actually, my dreams used to often be all about anxiety, and it was often about losing cats and sort of holding them, and then sort of like I can't put them down. That was with those two previous ones. Actually, I haven't had that with the latest ones, but
Yeah, yeah. I've had dreams where I've seen my cat and we're miles from home.
yeah,
Like just off of a motorway or something, or in some place, and you're thinking, how am I going to deal with this?
I know that's always the tricky one, actually.
We get
Or
that. Yeah. I mean, every time the cat goes out, there's because he's an outdoor cat, really, he spends a lot of time outdoors. But he's 14 now, so
he's
um,
slowing down, isn't he?
yeah, a little bit.
Which is nice, but anyway, gorgeous. Anyway, look, thank you ever so much for your time, and all the best for this amazing album. Thank you.
Very much.
Thanks a lot.
Keep in touch.
I will.
Through you get my email through Ben or through.
Oh yes, because I didn't come via directly from you. Do you think Ben will be quite easygoing?
Yeah. I mean, he'll or the record company or whatever. We just it'd be nice to
Keep in touch. I will. Okay, look, Richard, have a lovely evening. Take care, and all the best for the album.
Thanks so much.
Take care. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
And that, dear listener, is the end of the interview. You probably gathered. Massive thank you to Richard for giving me the time for that. This has been the C86 show. David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can on any of the social media platform sites. Just do C86 show. And all these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.